What's up, everybody? Today is a big honor for me. I get to talk to Bob Goff. How you doing, Bob?
Great to be on with you on the podcast.
For anyone who doesn't know about Bob, I'm gonna just give a couple of brief stories that really stuck out to me when reading a lot of your books, just to give them a sense of who you are. So the first one that I think is incredible is you put your personal phone number in the back of one of your books. Millions of copies of books around the world have your personal phone number in them, and people call it, and you actually answer. That I think gives a great sense of who Bob is. You also wrote letters to a bunch of world leaders with your kids. That's true, right?
Yeah, all of them.
Yeah, all the world leaders, asking them to meet just to chat, and ended up meeting with dozens of world leaders from what I understand. Maybe we can go into that, but and then ended up giving these world leaders a key to your house to come over for a sleepover. You have 5 New York Times bestsellers. You used your book advance from Love Does to create a school in Uganda to help over 500 students, I believe. And you just kind of live like anything's possible. And so I have decided from reading your books that I want to be like Bob Goff when I grow up. And so I'm
Oh,
hoping.
aim higher.
And so I'm hoping you can teach us a little bit how to do that. I wanted to start off with a question. I feel like most of us, including me, are chasing success and productivity in this world right now, but you have seemed to chase people instead. Where did that come from for you?
That's great. I have this image of me like running around just chasing people. That creepy old guy. So I think it's just parting at some point with the applause. I mean, if you want applause, join the
Mm.
circus. But to say if you want to leave impact. And so the longer I get in the tooth, the more I think about legacy. And not to say will it work, because that would have been my 20s and 30s, but to say will it last?
Mm.
Because there's plenty of things that work. Like pet rocks worked for a while until the people realize they're paying $30 for a rock. So they didn't last. And so loving people, developing some friendships where there's nothing on the other side of the equal sign, that'll last. That's where you see old friends from high school that are buddies of yours that you just click back and go right back. It's like we never were apart. That is the litmus test that, oh, here's something that's going to last.
Mm.
And so I totally get why you do this up and to the right, because you want to get some positive feedback. And I think it's almost a primal thing. Cavemen, like there was one caveman in this cave and the other one was in this cave, but caveman 2 had a pet T-Rex. And then all of a sudden there was an empty cave. And so caveman 1 took note of that and said, get a parrot. And so I think what we want to do is we might glance at what other people are doing to orient ourselves, but not overly identify with what people are saying. Otherwise, everything's an applause meter.
I was curious. I wanted to ask you just about kind of your decision making process. I know that maybe you don't think about it. Maybe you just aim for joy and loving moments. But, when I examine my life, there's every day, there's multiple decisions that I can make. Like, for example, you talk about in one of your books where you pick up the phone for strangers all the time because of putting your phone number in the book. So you call yourself unreasonably available. And
Yeah.
I just think it's an interesting thing to maybe examine. How do you make those decisions? Because I have the tendency, I was trying to make music for a while. I was very broke, and it's like created this scarcity mindset inside of me where it's like I need to work so I can get this and that for Nick. And
Yeah.
I've been trying to break that over the years, being more available, being more open to the possibilities. But you seem to be on the ultimate side of that. So I'm curious, when you're making decisions of like someone calls you like, "Hey Bob, can you come do this?" Like, what does that look like for you, if that makes
Yeah, I like that. I was just riffing in my mind when you said I was always broke, and I was thinking immediately that we're always broke, just in different ways. You
Mm,
can be like, go, make a bunch of money in the marketplace, but then be broken emotionally. You could be, so I want to have us understand that there was always going to be some sense of brokenness about us. That doesn't mean that we're I used to think of myself as like a remodel. And then I started thinking of my life a little bit more like a tear down. So I'm not trying to remodel in it for people who faith guides their steps. Then they would say like, "Oh, I totally get this idea. These are concepts that are I'm familiar with." But we don't need to walk around moping around about how broken we are all the time. I think having a healthy realization, these are the areas I'm trying to grow in, and then realizing what are some of the things that you have on a loop just right under the surface. So I'm a pretty upbeat guy, but I'm
mm,
totally insecure.
mm,
Completely. About 80% insecurity. This is like that, and 40% Red Bull is talking to you right now. So, um, to understand that we've got this problem and that we just deal with our insecurities in different ways. And so
mm,
some people get mean like a rattlesnake when they're insecure.
mm,
Some people immediately came to mind for your listeners. And then other people get quiet like a church mouse when they're insecure. And I get funny. Like the more insecure I get, the funnier I get, or at least in my mind. So, so realizing, knowing your tells, like if
mm,
I was playing poker with you and I had five of a kind, or actually you get shot for that, four of a kind, and then I would be all smiles. I could not cover it up. I would just be, but if I'm really insecure, what I'll do is I'll mask that with a whole bunch. I'm not trying to be inauthentic. There's been a go-to that I've learned that I can mask this punishing level of insecurity by just a huge dollop of hope. Like what might be
mm,
possible, staying curious. Um, when you mentioned that school in Uganda, it started, we invited 400,000 kids who were out of school in northern Uganda during this 20-year civil war. We said, let y'all come to school for free, and only 9 showed up.
wow.
I wasn't bummed. I was like, "Let's do this thing." And then 9 turned into 19, and there's 2,000 kids living on campus at that school right now, and we're building a university, and, we're building, well, I think of a zoo, but it's not a zoo. It's supposed to be called a habitat. I'm like, "Whatever." So, I was thinking an animal that doesn't bite people would be hard to lose, and I'm like, "Giraffes." So we have a giraffe sanctuary going in.
Wow.
So I just love that. But where do you get a giraffe, Nick? Like you can't buy eggs on like Amazon. It would be pretty cool if you could.
No clue. Where do you
Yeah.
get a
Turns
draft?
out the president of Uganda owns all the giraffes in Uganda.
No
It's a perk
way.
of the job. So I don't know him, but I do know his wife pretty well. And so we sat down to talk giraffes, and she ran over and grabbed him by the ear, and we walked out with 6 giraffes. So here's the idea, like you get an idea that's worth pursuing, and it's
Mm,
usually not a up and to the right idea. You can marketplace stuff is great too. But you get this idea that feels enduring, and it doesn't feel like it's about you. And you start thinking, what would happen in the life of a kid who's in a hut in northern Uganda? And you
mm,
can imagine like what would happen to go from diapers to doctorate.
mm,
And then maybe not even think there because it feels noble to go across an ocean. It isn't, but it feels noble. But that whole idea to go love your neighbor, go across the street and so say, what's something I can do right now with a neighbor? What's a word of encouragement you could give? Even this morning before we jumped on, I sent 5 notes out to 5 people I barely know
mm.
that are going through hard times. It's easy to find out who they are because they're all over the headlines. Um, but to let them know, and I'm not looking for new pals. I'm not looking for a selfie. I just want to encourage them. Get that in the air supply. And there's something beautiful about that. I'm not saying there's no hook. There's nothing on the other side of the equal sign.
That's beautiful. And would you say that maybe there's a up and to the right, but it's love and impact? Like, it's still like, you just try and do more of that, and everything seems to work out when you make that your guiding light?
Yeah, I'd say legacy stuff. And, we're all amateurs when it comes to loving people. There's
Mhm.
nobody, those NASCAR drivers that have leather suits and is sponsored by, there's no like sponsor by Hershey's and Starburst and all that. Nobody goes pro when it comes to loving people. And I mess up all the time. Uh, However, I want us to get back in the saddle and keep trying. Like that
Mhm.
idea, if you've had a 1-year-old and you see them take their first step, you don't say like, "I've seen better." You go, "That was awesome." Like, I wonder if there's a second step in there. So living with that kind of anticipation is not just yippee skippy over caffeinated energy. It's just actually thinking like what might be possible. And if we start thinking about other people that way, we start thinking about our impact and what's available to us, then actually things start changing. It's like you create your own weather pattern.
And it also seems that when you take steps like that, you know, these things that, for example, like the scarcity thing I mentioned that I might worry about, where am I going to get my next meal or pay my rent or whatever? Like those things seem to take care of themselves when you're consistently focusing on just helping other people. Have you found that to be true?
It's this weird inverse economy. It's like it kind of flips the whole thing over again, whether you have a background in faith or you just love humanity, wherever it is that there's an inversion that happens, that the people that seem to be striving the most for things, and that's not a bad thing to be striving, but sometimes they walk around with a heavy level of disappointment.
Hmm.
I'm not advocating for doing nothing. I'm the opposite. Let's lead where you can. And then when you have an opportunity, your head's on a swivel to say what might be possible. And it might lead you across the ocean, but hopefully it'll lead you across the street to one of your neighbors. And I've got
Yeah.
some really weird neighbors. They're listening. Hi. Um, the I've got a neighbor, Pat, and when we moved into this house 30 years ago, I heard all this rustling on the side of the house. I'm like, raccoons. And I realized I live in San Diego. We don't have raccoons. And so I went out there and I saw Pat pulling my garbage cans out to the street. I'm like, oh, buddy, no, I'm like still ambulatory. I can do this. And we're arguing about my garbage cans all the way, and he's winning the tug of war. And we get out to the street, and I look to my right and my left, and Pat has taken everybody's garbage cans
Mm.
out. And he's got like one of those, a jet on the tarmac, always ready to go to the next place. He's a really busy guy. And then he'll fly back and he'll put everybody's cans away. So this idea of loving your neighbor isn't just a concept. It's not a metaphor for something else. So learning from other people, head on a swivel, seeing how well they're doing things, not critiquing or criticizing or thinking about the environmental impact of him taking out my garbage cans or how does that how disrespectful. Like not being a critic of things, just say like, what a delightful thing. And we started a parade on our block. Our block's only 8 houses long. So we 28 years ago, we started a parade and the kids were the size of trout. And we said, here's the rule for the parade. Everybody has to be in it and nobody can watch. And so the first year we had 5 of us and we walked from the end of the street. Just me, sweet Maria, 3 kids, and then we picked a little old lady to be the queen, and then another little person to be the grand marshal, and now by the time everybody lines up, we're at our house. There's like 500 or 600 people that show up at this thing, and the same rule: nobody watching, everybody in. And so that, if you think about that as a kind of a life approach, that
Mm.
fewer commentators, it's not a bad thing, but maybe if we're going to commentate, I want to find the good and the possible. And it's not just being yippee skippy, it's just saying that's more lasting. That would
Mm.
be a more strategic move because whatever's last week's headline is, that's going to be off and everybody's off to the new thing that's happening. It's not that they're unimportant. It's just unimportant to me compared to the things that are important to me.
We interrupt this program to ask you to subscribe. Please just hit that little red button below this video. I'm going to wait. Are you tapping it? Thank you. It means the world to us, and it really allows us to keep this show going and providing valuable content for you. I hope you enjoy this show. I want to talk a little bit about Jesus because I know that he is, one of probably the one who taught you this, if I had to guess. And you have a great quote that you say, instead of telling people what Jesus meant, love people the way Jesus did. And I just feel like that's what you've been expressing here. So I'm wondering if you have any thoughts about just that quote, and maybe if someone doesn't understand what Jesus represents and wants us to do with our lives, like how does telling people what he wanted us to do versus actually doing it, what's the difference there?
Yeah, I didn't grow up in a church and didn't know anybody who did go to church. I mean, just kinda I think, in high school, when this buddy of mine, Doug, he and I went out with pellet guns shooting at cans, and then I remember, looking, Doug wasn't next to me anymore, and I looked behind a tree, and the muzzle of his barrel is pointing at me because I was the next can, and started running away, and I turned around, and he shot me. It went like in me, not like paintball in me, like in me. And we're putting leaves and dirt and stuff on it. We go home to his house and he's got scope mouthwash out and some tweezers. And he's trying to get the pellet out from, like, it's in me. He started telling me about Jesus. I'm like, you shot me. I didn't think that was allowed. And so that was my introduction to faith from somebody who's just as fallible and screwed up as me. But I think I realized that it wasn't just a bunch of doctrine, a bunch of don'ts and all that, but I just go like, there's actually this confluence of beautiful things that I'm no evangelist. I'm not like, I'd make a lousy evangelical because I'm not trying to talk people into or out of anything. But I remember during high school, there was a group, it was called Mogul Ski Club in San Jose, California. We'd load onto the buses and they'd take you up to the Sierra Nevada skiing for the day and you'd come home at midnight. My parents loved it because I was out of their hair, but I didn't have any money to do this. So I was the guy that would make everybody's reservation on the phone. And then I would clean up the bus when everybody left, trashing it. And I found this Bible. I didn't know it was a Bible. It said good book. I'm like, I could use a good book. And so I'm flipping through it. I've never flipped through these things before. And I'm looking at Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. It's all the same story. I'm like, average book at best. Um, but I started meeting along the way some people as fallible as me. And there's something that just clicked. I just go like, this is somebody who, like, lived and loved people. And it wasn't what I want to reject is some of the modern crazy that's going on. Because I think we make loving people a lot harder than Jesus made loving people. And so I think as a trial lawyer for 35 years, used to argue with people about stuff, but I'm not trying to be Jesus's lawyer. I'm not trying to be your lawyer, anybody else's lawyer. I want to just keep my eye on the prize. What is going to actually outlast me? Um, and so, in that respect, some beautiful people have been dropped in my life along the way. One of the things that resonated with me, Jesus talked about hungry people and thirsty people and sick people and strange people and naked people and people in jail. And he said, if you want to meet me, you got to meet them. So really, as simple as that sounds, that is what I've been trying to do. Like, we've
Yeah.
got feeding programs for hungry people. And when I say we, I'm referring to the, like, awesome people at Love Desk that are out there doing that stuff. And then thirsty people, we've got wells that are we, meeting all the awesome people that are taking the wells. So, um, and then I teach at San Quentin. I got a great, I've been teaching there for almost a decade. I love it. I've had 800 guys that are in San Quentin. Nobody actually graduates ever, but they've been in the class. We have graduation ceremonies, then they go back to their cells.
Yeah.
I'm like, bummer. But I think there's something, and they haven't learned a thing from me, but I've learned a ton from them. Authenticity, humility, kindness. Man, I was getting a couple calls a week during COVID from guys inside San Quentin who wanted to make sure I didn't have it. And at the time, San Quentin was the highest incidence by percentage of COVID in the nation.
Mm.
And so you take these guys in these 160-year-old cells that are 6 feet wide and 10 feet long, and they're making calls to me to make sure I'm okay. I go like, I'm learning about friendship, like
Mm.
taking a genuine interest in other people and go like, that's the money. So I think the whole idea of we don't feed hungry people because it's feels noble. We do it because we actually want to do something with our faith. And I know Jesus doesn't need our help, he needs our hearts. So that's, I think, the heartbeat of where I'm coming about the intersection of faith and hope. And I write books for the guy at the tire store, as somebody I would call church adjacent, kind of
Mm.
like me. I'm not mad. I'm not mad at the church. I'm not in the front row of the church. I'm just adjacent. I just want the guy at the tire store to know he's invited. He's welcome
Mm.
here. And if it's a little wonky in there, come on, I'll meet you on the corner. We'll just hang out. And nothing against the church. You'd be like, awesome. I'm a big fan.
That's beautiful. I love that. And something that you brought up there, the thirsty people, hungry people. You mentioned this in one of your books, I believe. I think it was Matthew 25:35 was
That's it.
the verse, and it was just so profound how you said it. It was like everyone is always wondering what God's purpose for their life is, and you're essentially saying it's right here. We don't need to question it. And that just impacted me of because I think, we're all looking for this grand purpose, but you kind of
Yeah.
simplified it very
Well,
well.
kind of the roadmap, it wasn't me, it was like just Jesus, it was the stuff he
Yeah.
read, and again, if faith doesn't guide your steps and you're listening to that, insert here all of your lived experiences. So have you found that these things would be helpful to you? And so because faith does guide mine, I'm not trying to be a better version of me, I'm trying to be a more accurate reflection of what Jesus was doing. And
Mm.
so one is self-improvement, which is terrific. Improve. Like that's great. We can all have more game than we do. But to say what's more lasting, and if somebody that I trusted pointed to something that was more lasting, I just want to do more of that.
You talk a lot about the becoming childlike because that's also something Jesus says is very important. You mentioned a time when like the disciples are arguing over who's going to get the closest seat to Jesus. And then he turns around. He's like, if you don't become like children, you will. I don't know the rest of that verse, but
No,
he's
like that.
that's the
Like
point.
yeah, unless you change and become like a child, you'll never enter the kingdom of God. And I'm no theologian, but I some people say you just pray a prayer, and evidently there's more because this was in the red letters. Jesus is like you can pray the prayer,
Mm.
but to say, I've invited Jesus in my life, I'm not making light of that. But I think that whole idea is a childlike faith. Um, one of the guys that contributed a whole bunch of letters to what we call the scriptures was Paul. And he said the only thing that counts is faith expressed in love. And so I kind of get that idea that, like, hey, I'm hearing a lot about people, what they believe. I'm just like, show me how that's working out on a
Mm.
Tuesday. Don't call it ministry, just call it Wednesday or Thursday or Friday. So I feel like kind of a man of the cloth without the cloth. because because sometimes faith has you end up with more baggage associated with that than Delta Airlines has in their terminal in Atlanta. So what I want to do is to like unload some of the baggage because otherwise you just meet the baggage, you don't meet the person. Have you ever had Nick uh, like you have a pull piece of luggage and then the handle falls off? And then you've got no handle. So what you need to do is like kind of clutch it like this. And so if I'm clutching, my bag and then you're clutching your bag, then you and I don't meet, our baggage meets. So what I'm trying to do, like, and I think your aim is help people get a handle on their faith, get the
Mm.
handle on what they believe. And so we don't meet, as soon as you have a handle on it, you're not meeting the baggage, you're meeting the person. And you go like,
Mm.
ah, how refreshing.
Yeah, it is definitely one of my missions to help show exactly what you just said. It's like there's so much good in the teachings that Jesus was saying. It's just we've turned it into this whole other thing where it's about who's right and who's wrong, and it becomes judgmental. And it's not that every Christian at all is like that. It's just that's the view people have from the outside. I think they tend to see that because, that stands out the most, and it's just when I hear become childlike, like, the difference between a child and an adult, the only difference is, like, a child walks around just wide eye open, loving to absolutely everyone. They don't have any judgment right out the gate. They don't have any preconceived beliefs that they are just a pure ball of joy, and then it's us that try and turn it into a rule book of, like, we're doing it right, you're doing it wrong, and I just hate that part, and I think it's given Jesus a bad rep at times.
Yeah, I'm not gonna I don't know anything about amygdalas and prefrontal cortex and all that, but the reason you can't remember anything before you're 2 is the amygdala is still, like, forming. So I totally get that idea. You're a kid, you have a memory of a goldfish. You just be like, "Whoa, me again." So what I want us to do is to get back to that where we end up as we develop, as a species, and there our little reptile minds start remembering things, and there can be a good side of that. The caveman with the T-Rex memory, don't have a T-Rex. Um, but there's the backside of that same wave is that we remember every hurt and every offense and
Mhm.
every misunderstanding, and then the things we don't understand, then we make a story about. We make a story. Maybe it's true, maybe it isn't, but we develop the story, and then the story then prompts us to have rules. I'll give you an example. So think of high school. Maybe you had a sweetheart and somebody liked you, and then you like them, and then they decided to not like you, or they ran off with somebody else. And they in a beautiful way, like it's awesome, nothing sinister, but you may come up with a story that I'm not worthy, I'm not lovable,
Mhm.
I'm not worth. People will leave me if they get to know me. And so that would be little Bobby Goff, right? So that thought everybody's going to leave. And then what you do is you make a rule around this. And the rules are, think of those as like scaffolding around your little heart that isn't equipped to deal with those things. You don't know how to do it. So you may make a stupid rule like, I'll never love again. Remember those kind of vows you made in high school? I'm never going to do this again. I'll always, whatever. So then the rule that was great scaffolding at the time becomes a little bit like San Quentin. It kind of cages you in later because now 22-year-old Bob Goff can't get a date. The reason I can't get a date is I'm keeping it really shallow because the story is if I ever let anybody really know me, then they'd split. So we create a story for the things we don't understand. You make a rule to like that goes with the story, but then the rule that at one time was helpful is not helpful anymore. And it's actually preventing you from progressing. So I'm no psychologist, but I think that's been a helpful thing for me as a layperson to say, what was the story? What were the rules? And is the story true? Maybe it was true at one time. Is it still true? And is the rule helpful? Because what we end up doing is we end up meeting people with all the rules we've created. Some people are trying to protect baby Jesus, that they just want to, stick up for it. And it comes from a good place, I suppose. But probably a little dollop of insecurity in there as well, as we all do. But man, read Revelations. He's out of the crib. So it isn't indifference. It's actually say like, I don't need to defend that. What I need to do is kind of get my ish together
Mm.
to deal with my rules and stories and all that. So I can show up and be available to people. So when they call on the back of the book, that I'll be there and I can just say hello. And the crazy part about availability is that when you say hello, I've just answered every question they had because they just want to know if it's really true. And then you said hello, they go like, "Oh my gosh, it's true." And most people don't know what to say next. They go like, "Hey, what did you call?" And like, "How are you doing? What's your name?" Look, let me buy a vowel. So, but most people are just once you just let people know you're true, you're here, you're available, they're worthy, they're worth it, and be like, now we got a ball game.
That was the first question my wife asked was like, "Do you think he actually would answer if I called that number right now?" Uh, and I love that, and I just find that part of what you do so fascinating because you've still from a worldly perspective, you've accomplished things. Like, you've written amazing books. The thought of writing a book scares the crap out of me because it sounds like so much work. Uh,
I
and
wrote that. You ever written a book yet?
no, I am
Oh, let's fix that. I can
furious.
barely spell cat, but there. What I'll do is I'll send myself 100 emails every day. Isn't that crazy? Like just little shards of ideas, something you said, something.
Okay.
I'll send myself an idea, and then some people in faith communities have what's called a quiet time. It feels a lot like time out or detention to me. So mine are really loud. Like I'll take everything even this morning, that practice of writing down everything yesterday. Then this morning, before I send my notes to maybe 5 or 6 people that need just a boost, not from me, but just it wouldn't hurt in the middle of some storm clouds. Then I'll go back to all the things I sent to myself yesterday and I'll try to add a sentence above and 2 sentences below each idea.
Mm.
And just to make them more fulsome. And some ideas, it's just like the NyQuil speaking. I don't know what that was about. But other ideas actually are worth talking about. And Nick, if you did that for 100 days, you'd have a book. Isn't that crazy? Yeah. So don't spend a year writing a book. Spend like, I don't know, a month. Just get her done.
So you're collecting all the inspiration as it comes and then kinda processing it the next day,
That's
just
it.
staying
And
on
then
top of it.
kind of to our point about like you will see what you're looking for, or your notes will start reflecting that because you're looking for that. You're just spinning the puzzle piece. You're trying to find it. And then once you find a piece, I have an exercise I do. We have a place that we gather people together in San Diego here, and I have a 1,000 piece Disneyland puzzle. And I'll just take handfuls of the puzzle pieces and throw them out to people. The people that help us clean up are not fans of this, but somebody will take a tiny little puzzle piece and I'll say, like, where is it? And they know exactly that's Frontier Town. That's like this, or this is Tomorrowland, or this is the Haunted Mansion. We even have gatherings out at Disneyland. We call it the School of Whimsy. And we'll rent out one of the restaurants at Disneyland and meet there. And then we get people tickets to Disneyland. And if you want to talk about your biggest fear, we meet at the Haunted Mansion. If somebody wants to talk about their future, we have somebody meet with them in Tomorrowland. And so it's really this beautiful kind of thing. If it's about the homeless, then I've got somebody on Main Street. There's something really beautiful and enduring about that. And I think if we start thinking in these whimsome, childlike ways
Mm.
where we have shared experiences, that's the money. Take people, if you want to know where you're at in your faith, to see how you deal with the people that you don't get along with the most.
Mhm.
Um, 2 people came to mind. We've got some stuff we do in Mogadishu, and there was a group of 60,000 people that the ISIS arm had encircled, and they were preventing any food getting to them. And so we had chartered a cargo plane out of Italy to fly to Kenya to put 60,000 people worth of food on it. And I invited these 2 guys in the faith community that were kind of like at each other in a very public way. I said, come with me. We're going to land in the desert and give 60,000 people worth of food. Then we're going to take off again. And they both chickened out. But there's something beautiful about inviting people along on a caper. So maybe instead of shooting darts at people and saying, well, they're wrong, or I've got an opinion about that, or here's 3 things they don't want you to know, that sinister kind of negative thing. But to just say, what if we have a shared experience? And that's out of the book of Acts. It said they broke bread together, they pounded some carbs, and they had things in common. So I love that. Acts 2 and Acts 4 it says the same thing. They broke bread, they had things in common, and it said their numbers were added to daily. I get it. Start doing that in our faith gatherings, wherever it is, and you'll see change in the world.
Do you think it's because we start to realize we're just not that much different? We
Yeah,
just
we had more going on. Like, they thought that guy snores like a saw. Like, it's just unbelievable. There was a guy I took along on one of these trips, and he was snoring. It was crazy. I'm like, buddy, you need an operation. It's like 11 o'clock and 12 and 1 and 2, and he's still going at it. It's getting louder and louder. And I was like, Dude, I had stabbed him in my mind 1,000 times. I put a pillow over his head in my mind. Well, I woke up in the morning and he came out about the time I came out at dawn. And I'm like, dude, your snort, that's unbelievable. And he said, my snoring, your snoring was crazy. I'm like, I wasn't snoring. I was awake listening to your snoring. And just then we heard, and it was a cow giving birth outside the window. So sometimes we come up with these really sinister things about somebody's got it wrong or it's they're all their fault. I'm not saying all of that is saying I would just divide it by a little bigger number, right?
Right.
I was laughing because I was in the Midwest with a bunch of cowboys and it was just me and 600 cowboy hats. And I wasn't really clear why I was there, but I was to say something. And and when people find out from California, they'll sometimes say something snide, like they'll say, like, you know, you're a couple of fries short of a Happy Meal or whatever. I get it. California's got a well-earned, sometimes bad reputation. Um, and uh, and so this guy come up to me and he said, I don't think your lid's on right. And I'm like, what did I say to you? And I realized he was talking about my coffee cup. So maybe if we could be just a little bit slower to take offense at things,
Mm.
that he was just trying to be helpful. He didn't want me to see all of this end up my lap. And so he came up and then nice, I don't think your lid's on right. And I was so glad that I didn't go with my first reaction like lawyer Bob and to just say like, I don't understand. Can you clarify that for me? And then he's like, you know, your lid. Like, oh, so maybe a really practical thing is ask for a little clarification,
Hmm.
not in a sinister way, but just say, hey, help me understand this thing. And that was just such a palms up kind of thing to ask, like, hey, help me understand. I think I must have done something that was like off putting and help me understand that a little better. And that's just such a fair thing to ask. And then all of a
Yeah.
sudden we've got a relationship, not advocates clashing with each other.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so true. I While you were talking, I thought about how you reference a lot broken people and the idea of, I mean, loving the hardest people to love, but also just that God uses broken people just like us, you know?
Exactly. I
And
was thinking like the hardest people to love, like that would be me.
yeah, same. Ask my wife. um, but seriously, why do you think? I mean, we're all broken. I guess is that what you're getting at there with like God uses broken people like us?
Yeah, I just think it's just more pieces to work with, right? And
Hmm.
just to realize that we're all got our little picadillos. If you see me speaking somewhere, in the old days when I was up on stages more than I'm interested in doing now, I'd always have a lousy, like one of those orchestra music stands in front of me, and people would think I had notes on that, and I don't. What I do is I get really distracted if somebody in the front row, I don't care how many people are in an arena, if somebody in the front row is jiggling their leg,
Mm.
it's so distracting to me. So it's not their problem, it's my problem. Like I'm the weird guy. And so I just put the stand in between me and whatever's distracting me. Right. Because I realize I have the problem and I get easily distracted by that. So if faith guides your steps, if you just think you can just put Jesus in between you and whatever's distracting you. And if you
Mm.
start doing that, then instead of putting argument or accusation or innuendo or whatever, or a story, they're a bad guy, or they must be sinister or mean, or, not like puppies or whatever it is. If you could put something else rather than all the infill that we go in there that tends to say, I'm looking for validation. And so I'm looking for more evidence that I'm right.
Mm.
And so instead of like, that's just exhausting to collect all that. So if you could think of something else to put in between you and all of that, but you don't need to swing at every pitch. And that's just great advocacy to say, and it's hard. I've gotten trolled by somebody before and it was like an awful feeling. But what I did is I went to my friends right away to say, hey, I'm sure there's some stuff I can learn about this. So help me on the growing edge of learning. Cause even when you feel like it's unfair, you just go like, "Oh, no, no," but, like, there's obviously something in there that's important and big and all that, and yet at the same time, you can turn down the squelch on all of that and not let them have as much airtime as they're having in your mind.
Yeah. You mentioned distraction. Just we're getting near the end here, but I want to talk a little bit on distraction. Just it feels like now we have more than ever, and I struggle with that for sure. There's just so many things kind of that I could be doing or coming at me from all different angles. Our phone, as you mentioned. Um, I guess what do you do to prevent yourself from getting distracted by all the noise? Just concentrate on loving people and focus there, or what does it look like for you?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind when you say all the noise is I don't try to outshout it. So if you're think of a really loud room, and that would be everybody's opinion about whatever it is. So if the room is really loud, I don't raise my voice to get heard above that. The only time I yell or raise my voice is when I'm yodeling, and I've never yodeled. So I'm not going to try to raise my voice above the din of everyone else's. I'll just try to find a quieter place to have that conversation to say, "Hey, is this important? Is this in the top 3 or 4 things that matter to me?" Most of them don't. But for the things that are distracting me, I want to see it, me with a sewing machine legs, see it so can understand it. So then I can take it to Jesus to fix it. Right?
Mm,
And if faith doesn't guide your step to say, I can see it, I can understand it. Now what I can do is repair it.
mm,
Um, but if we just are very general in what we're saying, I'm bummed out. That's a legit feeling, and we've all experienced that. But let's just slice it up a little bit. Say, what are we bummed out about?
mm,
I'm going to give you a quick example. For 30 years, we've gone to this place, a really remote place in Canada, and we built this place, and then it burned down, and we rebuilt it again. And the only way in and out of this is a really long boat ride or on a seaplane. And so I learned how to fly a plane because I'm too like I can't watch, you know, baseball games. All it's just too slow moving, and I got to be going fast. So I learned how to fly this plane, and after a surprisingly few lessons, they turn you out alone. You do your solo trip. And they say what you do is you look out at everything, make sure you're not going to hit anything, then you chunk it up 10% of the sky at a time. And you take a
mm.
hard look at 10%. So in the first lap around the airfield, San Diego is a pretty busy place, and there's this big jet. Probably landing at Lindbergh Field. And so I see this jet, and it turns out we're on this collision course. We're at the same elevation and going in the same direction. So I'm like, don't freak out. I just went down 1,000 feet. But Nick, when I went down 1,000 feet, it went down 1,000 feet.
Oh no.
I'm like, and we're still closing in on each other. So I'm like, don't freak out. I just went up 2,000 feet. So I go, and as I started ascending, it started ascending. And now I'm a little puckered up. I'm like, yikes. And then I realize it's a bug on the windshield. And here's my point. Sometimes the things that seem like they're dogging you the most, they seem like so dire, it's just a bug on the windshield, but it
Mm,
seems its proximity to you makes it look like a 747. And
mhm,
so in your life, if there's a person that's difficult, if there's a circumstance, it's not diminishing the gravity of that circumstance, but if you could like kind of zoom out a little bit, then you realize compared to all the other things, let's definitely deal with the bug in the window, but let's not catastrophize. It's not a 747 that's going to hit you.
mm. And it follows you wherever you go, and just like
It's just
that
ever you
scenario.
go up, you go down, there's the bug in the window. Yeah. But as soon as we see it and we understand what it is, then we can do something about it.
That's great. Well, Bob, I really appreciate you chatting today, and
You
I,
bet.
I hope
Great
we can
talking to you. You're doing
I
great
hope we can
stuff.
do this again. I do have a
Let's do it.
question. I always ask, do you have a favorite quote?
Gosh, I think there's in Matthew 16, there's a part where Jesus says, so where does everybody say I am anyway? And it just seems like these days, in those days, people were asking, they had all kinds of explanations. And some say you're a teacher, and some said you're a prophet. And then this guy, Simon Peter, says, I think you're God. And here's the verse, here's the quote that makes the most sense to me. Don't tell anybody.
Hmm.
And I think the whole idea isn't to keep it a secret, it's show people, don't tell people. And
Oh,
so I would say that people ask sometimes in faith communities, what's your life verse? I'd be like, don't tell anybody. But
wow.
again, if you believe it, put wheels on it. And you don't need to get matching hoodies to do that. You just go do
Hmm.
it. Yeah. Hungry people, thirsty people, sick people, strange people, naked people, people in jail.
I love it. Thank you, Bob. I hope for anyone's listening who is listening, go check out his books. They are a ride, and the audiobooks are hilarious. Like you do such a good job of narrating them. I was laughing and learning at the same time. So it's a great. There's how many books do you have? Six,
I don't know.
seven,
There's a
five?
number of them. Yeah.
Okay, there's a lot. Well,
There's
go
like
get
a
one.
kids' books. Yeah.
But yeah, really appreciate it, Bob. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thanks a million, Nick.
Thank you so much for tuning into this conversation. We hope you loved it, and we hope you share it with your friends. And we also hope you subscribe. It's free for you to do, and it helps us out so much. These episodes are directed and edited by the one and only Mason Allen. This show would not happen without him. I'm Nicholas John. I hope you have a great day.